So this is as good a place as any to start. I just wanted to talk about 5 things I wish I knew when I started riding. And this is coming from someone who hasn't been riding that long. I started out on the bike 8 or so 9 years ago. I did ride as a teenager with some dirt bikes and stuff like that, much to my parents' disgust and generally without permission. But that's all behind us now. We do everything legally and above board and with insurance and all that sort of fun stuff. So in the last 8 or so years, things have changed quite a bit in the motorcycle scene. The mini ADV bikes, or the medium size or small size adventure bikes, are really popular and that side of things. And I thought it would be quite nice to just reflect on 5 or 6 things that were kind of assumptions from my point, and that I may or may not have got wrong. And if it helps other riders out there, that would be fantastic. But I've got some errands to do. I'm on a bike, so I thought I'd chat some nonsense about stuff I don't really know enough about and shouldn't be chatting about. So, and I think the very first thing, we'll jump straight into it, is you don't need fast bikes. And let me preface this. So this list is very much focused on 5 things I wish I knew whilst riding in the UK. There are different rules for different places and that side of things, but fast bikes aren't all they're cracked up to be in the UK, simply because our roads don't lend themselves to the hyper nakeds or the super sports and that side of things. And I think they used to, and I think a lot of our back roads used to be perfect windy twisty places to go absolutely hammering around. But the combination of the bikes getting faster and faster and the roads getting poorer and poorer have just made it less welcoming. And the other side is we have more speed cameras, I think, than people in this country. Wringing your neck out, wringing the neck out of your bike continuously, just unless you're going to take your plates off and you're going to ride it illegally, which if that's you, then you do you. But unless you're going to ride in that sort of fashion, you're going to really struggle to open them up at all. And some of these bikes are crazy. They're doing 65-70 miles an hour in first gear. Brilliant. 65-70 miles an hour in first gear before you've really woken them up and you're actually pushing the bike in any meaningful fashion. So I think that's the first thing for me, is you don't necessarily have to progress to a big fast bike. I think progression's really important, but I think you need to progress to the most enjoyable bike, whether or not that's your ADV bike, your cruiser bike, your sports bike, if that's what you're into. I mean, I think the big sports bikes in this country are better suited to the track, and I'm not sure that a 1900cc cruiser is particularly greatly suited. And there is something, that's got to be said, that it's quite fun riding something out of its comfort zone and riding it in a way that it probably shouldn't be ridden. Taking street bikes off-road, taking adventure bikes on track, those sorts of things, are inherently fun, both to do and to watch. But for your everyday living with, and how you're sort of going to be dealing with that bike on a day-to-day basis and that side of things, you don't want to be permanently out of its comfort zone. You want the bike that's kind of fit for purpose and fit for you. And I think that's why in big cities you see the vast majority of riders are on the little 125 scooters and things like that, because they're perfect for that situation. So, but yeah, that's number 1 on the list. I've got a few others and I'll crack on through them. I've just got some bits and bobs to be getting on with. Well, I was going to stop for some lunch, but that's all busy, so I'll get something elsewhere. The other thing I wanted to, or one of the other things on the list that's worthwhile talking about, is the weather expectations in the UK. You're going to ride in rain. That's a default setting in this country. Anybody who lives in this country, hopefully that's common knowledge. It's a bit wet sometimes in this country and can get a bit drizzly. the weather's never the problem. Your expectations of what you can do when you're out in that weather are probably more of a challenge, if I'm honest. You know, if it's been raining and it's soaking wet, don't expect to be going out and getting your knee down on the twisties. Don't expect to be, you know, out absolutely hammering it, and certainly don't expect to be coming home warm and dry unless you've invested significantly in your gear. And I think that you know, that marries into the third one, which is the expectations that motorcycling is cheaper than owning a car. Yeah, owning a motorbike is cheaper than owning a top-end car. You know, if you do a comparison between an £80,000 car and a £10,000 motorbike, yeah, you've got a £70,000 buffer in that over your period of lifetime of ownership. But if you get your car on finance, or you get your bike on finance, and then you need the helmet, and then you'll want the gear, the jacket, the boots, the comms kit, the little bits of technology, then you want the locks. Then comes modifications and exhausts and toys and accessories, and the jacket that you've got is too thick for the summer or too thin for the winter, and you want something meshy for on those very rare occasions in the UK where it's above 30 degrees centigrade. You want some ankle boots for on those hot days. You want some long waterproof Gore-Tex boots for on the cold and wet days. If you're commuting, you want the bodysuit, yada yada yada. If you want to go racing on a track, you want the full leathers with an airbag, and you know, the cost of accessories, insurance and clothing and equipment, maintenance and all that sort of stuff. I think it's on a par for if you were to own a, you know, £8,000 or £9,000 car and an £8,000 or £9,000 motorbike with all the accessories and bits like that. Yes, they're cheaper to run, as in they're a little bit cheaper to, you know, on fuel and insurance in some cases, not all cases, but I think you take into account all of the peripherals and all of the accessories. Yeah, it's not as cheap as I first thought, that's for sure. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm a ponce when it comes to helmets, gloves and stuff like that. Like, I've got dozens of pairs, literally dozens of pairs of gloves. I think I've got over 25 pairs of gloves for no reason whatsoever, other than every time I see a glove I go, oh, that's nice, which is just ridiculous, because I generally wear the same 4 or 5 pairs, depending on the conditions and the time of year. Same as helmets, I've got 6 helmets, and I wear this Arai Concept XE 99% of the time. But this stuff adds up, and yes, there are cheap options out there, but as you use them and wear them and get into it, you will want to replace, upgrade and utilize and that side of things. So there are costs involved in that, and yes, you can be the very frugal motorcyclist in the same way that you can be the very frugal car owner and do everything yourself, do all the servicing and maintenance, and use only the very best Alibaba parts and that side of things. But the reality is if it's something you care about and you want to look after, there are going to be costs involved, even if you are doing everything yourself. It's, you know, chain replacement on my Target. It's like, yeah, I could have gone for a stock chain when I needed to replace it, but did I? No, I went for an upgrade. You know, I broke a wing mirror. Did I go for a standard? No, I bought foldable wing mirrors. I broke a handguard. Did I go for a standard replacement cheap plastic one? No, you buy Blockbusters. And it's that continuous iteration. So yeah, motorcycles can get hellish expensive without people thinking that they are. So that's your first 3. Yeah. Weather expectations. You don't need big bikes, really. Are they fun? Hell yes. But do you need them? Absolutely not. And the weather's always going to get you. And you invariably in this country, and I'm sure it's different for different parts of the world, but in this country, about 50% of the time, you're going to be in the wrong gear for the weather, because the weather's going to change when you're out. So there is always that part of it as well. The number 4 on the list that I wanted to talk about is motorists on the road. We're all taught when we do our CBT and our A1, A2 licenses here in the UK, which for those overseas, there are CBT is your compulsory basic training to allow you to ride a 125 up until from the age of 17. An A2 license allows you to ride, I think it's up to 400cc or 40 brake horsepower, which is why you have such a busy small motorcycle category in this country. And then your A1 license lets you ride pretty much anything you want. And you're taught in all of those consistently to ride like everybody's trying to kill you. And they're not. Generally, and I think I found over the past, particularly 5 or 6 years, and I used to do a lot of commuting into London on a motorcycle, so I've got a lot of, big shitty city experiences on the bike. And I think in general, people are more accepting now of motorbikes than they have been for a while, in my experience. Like, people give way, they're less pushy. Like, they were really pushy during the pandemic. God help you. And I think a lot of it is particularly during the pandemic. People were driving so infrequently that a lot of people forgot how to bloody drive. Whereas now I think we're so far past that, everybody's kind of got back into the groove and locked in a little bit on their driving, hopefully. And for the most part, the drivers, it's not that they're out to get you, you just don't exist. I know that Ryan at F9 and people like that, they've done all the thing about motorcyclists disappearing, and you give a quick glance, turn a corner, and I admit I've done it myself, where I've done a quick glance, gone to pull out and not realised there was a motorcyclist coming up. Now, in my defence, that dude was doing about 90 in a 60, so he came up a damn sight quicker than anything I was expecting to see. But that doesn't really change the fact that he was still there to be seen, and I didn't see him. And it's not that I was out to get him or anything like that, and it's generally motorists aren't looking to cause problems for motorcyclists in this country. Yes, they might get a bit butthurt if you're filtering lane and avoiding all the traffic in the world because they're sat in it, but the answer to that is they can always get a motorcycle, can't they? So yeah, it's a yes, assume that motorists are trying to kill you, but the reality is they're not, and they want to be getting on with their day just as much. They might be a bit frustrated if you're avoiding all the traffic and are able to skip through it, but they can do the same thing by getting themselves a bike license, can't they? So yeah, that's 4 out of the 5 that I promised you. I don't think this is going to be a particularly long video. I might do another one with some more. So we've had not needing big bikes, we've had the weather, motorcycling being cheaper than driving a car, and the fact that you think all drivers are out to get you, when the reality is they're not. And I think the final one for me, and what I'm going to finish on today, is B roads are your friend in this country. Yes, you can do lots of motorway miles and highway munching up around this country, and you can get around. And I was expecting to be out on my bike a damn sight more than I am. Life gets in the way. That's the reality. And little B road blasts and little poodles around and having fun with your mates is what it's all about. I don't avoid motorways, I just don't find motorway riding particularly enthralling or fun. It's nowhere near as good as, even this kind of riding. Yes, they're crappy back roads and it's a 20-mile-an-hour limit, but I still think this is more fun than just sitting on a motorway with cruise control on for 4 hours. What I get to at the end of the 4 hours, totally worth it. But if you have the option, and in this country we are blessed with an awful lot of options for this, is generally motorways are a secondary option to B roads and A roads to be able to get somewhere. And you can go all the back alleys and back ways, and there are apps out there like Calimoto, and even the Beeline app do it for you, where you can route plan a twisty ride. It depends how twisty you want it to be, but you can actually plan your own route. According to your preference and according to, have you got time to take the scenic route? And the answer's got to be, if you're on a motorcycle, you've always got time to take the scenic route. I just touched on it then, actually. There's probably one more. We'll do a bonus 6th one, shall we? you're not going to ride as much as you expect, or I certainly didn't. When I started riding, yes, I rode a lot during the pandemic, but that's because, you know, I went down the route. I was living on my own in the pandemic, and I very much used the motorcycle as my excuse to go out and do my daily shopping, because I refused to do a weekly shop when I was stuck at home on my own, so I did it daily. And obviously the supermarket that I wanted to use was about 20 miles away from home, so I was able to do, you know, 40 or 50 miles every day on the bike. But that wasn't the norm, because as soon as life got back to some kind of normality, and, you know, now life involves family and kids and jobs and all that sort of fun stuff, you just don't, well, I just don't have the time that I used to ride the motorcycle. So when I do get to go out like this, and this is I'm doing a lunch run and making a video, so I'm capitalizing on the time I've got. But the reality is these are few and far between. I've struggled tremendously over the years trying to be consistent with getting videos out. I think I've got a routine now, and you should start seeing that I'm trying to release one every Wednesday. And I've got a good 50 or 60 video ideas all queued up. It's just having the time and, you know, space between other commitments to be able to do it, which unfortunately, you know, this is a hobby. It's not a lifestyle. It's a hobby, and however you cut it, motorcycling is always a hobby unless it's your only form of transport. And if it's your only form of transport, or your primary form of transport, then yeah, absolutely lifestyle. It's everything about you and how you get around. I completely get that. But for the vast majority of riders in the UK, I don't think that's the case. So, but yeah, whilst I'm sat behind this big old dump truck, I think we'll call it there. Don't forget to check out the website, strangemonkey.com. have a look at some of the t-shirts and bits that I've got for sale there, or check out the other videos, and like and subscribe if you fancy. Okay, yeah. Yeah, well, I can't take you on the motorbike, it doesn't work that way. Mummy won't let me buy a sidecar.